Buenos dias, SciManDan. Well, it wasn't your usual ambush, but I'm so disappointed you don't want to talk about the tides with me anymore. Sad, really, because I found a pattern. I found the first pattern in the tides, and you're telling me that you don't want to talk about the tides with me anymore. Dan, I am heartbroken. But it's always a wise move to pull out of a losing battle, as they say. But if you ever change your mind, you know where I'm at, okay? Now, when I read out the 1980 book, I said, you turn your nose up a little bit at book time. Like, now he's going to read us a story from a book. 1961 encyclopedia. Information, valuable information. Information that once written, even though it could be a porky pie, it is still written in black and white, usually black and white. Now, if you indulge me, just 5 minutes, not a lot, there to there, not long. You say it's logical for everything to happen as it is. And I'm saying, no, it's not. It isn't logical. There is no pattern. But you're saying that there is that. I mentioned the incoming tide comes up here, stays at the top for X amount of time, and then when it goes back out, when it drops, it goes back the same way that it came. I don't think that's logical, not for a bulge. If you're in the middle of the ocean and the current's coming, like the moon's going, we won't move Earth, the moon goes this way, doesn't it, from east to west in our sky. If there's a bulge and you're in a boat somewhere and the water comes up the high tide, why would it go back down that way? You'd expect it to be like a Mexican wave. You'd see the water, it will come up and then carry on. So that's highly illogical to start with. I'm not sure how you find logic in that. There's a few things. But anyway, I'm saying there is no pattern, and you're saying that it is. It's logical for everything to be happening the way it does. No, I disagree with you there. Is this why you're going to part ways with me? I thought we were going somewhere here. Let me just read. Just a few paragraphs, right? It's not even a whole page, just 3 paragraphs. Right, where are we? In the Pacific and Indian Oceans, mixed tides are more prevalent. In these, the 2 high tides in one lunar day may be about equal, while the low tides are very unequal, or else the situation may be reversed. Finally, in the Gulf of Mexico, the China Sea and other places, we find diurnal, daily, not twice daily tides. Alternate low and high tides disappear more or less completely. There is only one appreciable rise and one fall of water in a lunar day. Because of the many factors that affect the tides, the observed times of a high water do not occur when the moon is highest in the sky, but show a considerable lag which differs in different places. The interval that elapses between the time when the moon is highest in the sky and the time of the next high tide is called the high water interval. Generally speaking, tides follow the lunar day of about 24 hours and 50 minutes. Where there are semi-diurnal tides, there will be an interval of about 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes between a high tide and the next low tide, and between a low tide and the next high tide. Here we go. In some places, however, the tides seem to be based on the solar day rather than the lunar day. Now, that's straight away, bang, out goes the pattern? Now it's saying that some tides obey the solar laws, not the lunar laws. Where did that come from? See, the books are important. So straight away, there is no pattern. If some tides obey solar laws, hello, when does that happen? There is no pattern. But I did find one, SciManDan. Right, I'm nearly finished here. Between other tide. In some places, however, the tides seem to be based on the solar day rather than the lunar day. In Tahiti, for example, high tides take place at about noon and midnight. Low tide at about 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. The reason seems to be that Tahiti is at the node of a basin whose waters are set in oscillation by the moon. Since there is very little relation to the tide producing force of the moon in this nodal area, the waters follow the tidal pattern set by the pull of the sun. Now, that to me is a speed bump because it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't. These people who say it's like you don't understand logic, all right? That's a speed bump. You cannot be saying, look, it's a speed bump, right? All of a sudden, when what they're doing is laying down the foundations for discrepancies that we cannot explain. Now we have tides that follow the solar day, the solar action. So how on earth, on the same planet, are you going to get some tides following the moon's gravitational pull, and now we have some following the sun's gravitational pull? How does that work? It's bizarre. Now I'll skip the rest of that. Hang on. All right. And let's just listen to this last bit, okay? The tides serve as a brake on the rotation of the Earth. Their friction on the ocean floor, particularly in shallow waters like the Bering Sea, robs the Earth of its energy of rotation. This loss is very small. It has been calculated that it is only about 1/10 billionth of the total rotational energy of the Earth. However, it slows up the Earth enough so that the day is lengthened by about 1,000th of a second every century. 1961. Now, this was obviously paving the way for a decade later, them saying that the few atomic clocks were out by approximately 300 billionths of a second. 1961. What was it? It was, the loss is very small. It has been calculated that it is only about 1/10 billionth of the total rotational energy. Horseradish, lies and charlatans. Who worked that out? 1961. Who worked the bulge out in 1961? There is no bulge, SciManDan. I find a pattern. The same morning I'm going to post my pattern, I get the news that you don't want to talk about the tides anymore with me. Well, let me leave you with this pattern. If you change your mind, you know where I am. The moon has nothing to do with the movement of waters on this planet. You're saying that the wind and the weather masks the rise and drop in the lakes and the seas that are cut off from the main oceans. The weather and wind mask the effects. They're too small. The Mediterranean, east to west. The amount of water that will be gushing out of the Straits of Gibraltar if there was a bulge going from east to west in the Mediterranean? Nah. The moon hasn't got anything to do with the water on this planet. Let me show you the pattern that I found. Now, and this pattern was me digging and digging and digging, because where there is no pattern whatsoever, you'd think that somewhere with something like the tides, there would have to be something, and I found it. The tide, let's say 6 hours, right? 6 hours in, 6 hours out. What we have in the first hour of the incoming tide, so it's low and it starts to come in. In that first hour, you get 1/12. Let's say it's, so here I've got the height. Let's say we have a 12-foot tide, right? From bottom to top, it's 12 foot. Start at 1 foot. What, now, the first hour, you get 1/12 of the total. That's 1 foot. By the end of the second hour, right, so these are hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The boxes are bigger because there's more water to deal with, right? But they're just all hours. The end of the second hour, so in that second hour, we get 2/12 come through. So it's double the first hour. The third, so that would be 3 feet at the end of the second hour. Then the third hour, which is from here to here, it doubles again. 6 feet. You get 3/12 of the total amount come in the third hour. The fourth hour, the same, right? So the third and fourth hours, it's the fastest it's coming in between the middle of the tide. And then the fifth hour, we have another 2/12 of the total, so it's slowing down, and then that last hour, we get 1/12 again of the total. So first hour, 1 foot. By the end of the second hour, there's 3 feet. By the end of the third hour, there's already 6 feet. So in that third hour, a quarter of the total comes in. And then that fourth hour, another quarter of the total comes in. And then it slows down for the fifth hour. And finally, for the sixth hour, puts the brakes right on. Now this is the thing I had, the pattern, but it starts slow, it comes up, and then third, fourth hours, it's like, comes in hard and then slows down. Then we have that stop, a lull for anywhere between 5 minutes and an hour, and it is between 5 minutes and it is an hour. How is that logical with oscillation and resonance? No, no, no. And then when it drops slowly, starts speeding up, and near the end, slows down again. It is a pattern. It is a pattern. They all do the same. It doesn't matter where you are. Anybody who's fished, anybody who does a lot of beach fishing, in entertainment down at the beach, that kind of thing, fun with the kids, you'll know. It comes in slowly to start with, and then it speeds up. You get that. And then near the top it slows down, comes to the top, stops. Then it drops the other way, and it does the same pattern. Starts off slow, picks up speed, and then ends up slowing right down. What are we on? 14 minutes. Right. So, a pattern, a proper pattern, is the amount of water coming in once it starts and dropping once it starts. Looked at this pattern, busted my ass, and I came up. My original, again, right? Didn't pinch this off of anybody. I say the water is being displaced, don't I? It's not the moon. It's not the moon. It's not the moon. With the tides, and then we have the solar thing going on. It's in the book. Solar day. So which tide is solar? Which tide is lunar? Neither of them line up with the moon or the sun. They say that. because you can have a high tide here. Let's say here, the moon could be there. And your next high tide there, the moon could be there. And the next high tide there, and the next one there, and the next one there, all the way around. There is no set pattern. Just because the moon is above you when it's high tide in your area doesn't mean a thing. It's purely coincidental. Because in a few weeks, the moon may not even be visible and you'll have a high tide. And then the next high tide, maybe it's up there, and then the next, and that is how it goes. There is no pattern. There should be. But the pattern that I found is a pattern that you would expect, but not with the way things are with the moon. It doesn't make any sense, SciManDan. It does not make any sense. It's about logic and common sense. To not be able to find, because there isn't a pattern, believe you me, I have looked. The only pattern is there is no pattern. Until this pattern pops up. I'm saying that something, it seems like the water is being displaced. It doesn't seem like it's being pulled by an outside force. It seems to be getting displaced by something. And now that we've seen that pattern, a sphere. If you put a sphere in a fluid, water displacement, that first bit of the sphere is not that much surface area. But as you go down, if you go down at the same speed, see how it speeds up when you do the third and fourth, like the middle, because there's more surface area. See, if it's going at the same speed, I'll go a little bit faster as I pull it out. See, that middle bit is faster than the two end bits. Of course it is. There's more surface area going through in the middle. And that is the pattern, the speed at which the water comes in at every high tide. Every tide. Anywhere you can, as you say, you can easily verify this information, because all you have to do, wherever there is a tide, you know, wouldn't be very good if it's really rough water, but you get a stick, you know roughly how high the tide's going to be from the bottom, and you can put the stick there and watch, take measurements. If it's going to be a 12-foot tide, you'll see the first foot will take an hour. The next hour, you'll have 2/12. That's 2 feet come in. And then as you're approaching the middle of the tide, that third hour, you'll have 3 feet come in. Then that fourth hour, same speed, gets to the fifth hour, it will slow down. You, as you say, can verify this information anywhere, as long as it's not rough water where you won't be able to monitor the up and the drop. So SciManDan, I'm sorry that we're not going to be doing this anymore, because I've enjoyed it. But I can understand you bugging out, mate. Slowly dropped the sphere. First, sixth, second, third, fourth, fifth. That is how the pattern is. Comes in, stops. It's not the moon. Well, it could be the sun, called summer solar, summer lunar. When it gets a little bit complicated, it could be solar. When things don't add up, it could be solar. When things are as you would like them, you can call it lunar again. not find a pattern, SciManDan. I have looked. That's the only pattern there is. It looks like a sphere. That is the speed with which it rises and with which it drops. So, if that is us and the tides, I bid you adieu. Inconclusive, SciManDan. Our logics are different. I think your logic is illogical. I'm sure you think my logic is illogical, but it isn't. There is only one logic. From what I see, it's not to be found anywhere around here. There is only one pattern, and that is the speed at which the tide comes in and with which it drops. Whether it's going to be a 4-foot tide coming in or a 50-foot tide coming in. It comes in at that speed. First hour at 12, second hour 2/12, third hour 3, fourth hour another 3/12, fifth hour 2/12, sixth hour winding right down the final 12th. A break in proceedings and then a drop of the same speed. 12th, 2/12, 3/12, 3/12, 2/12, and a wind down of 1/12 for that final hour. That pattern right there contradicts everything that is going on with this chaos here. That pattern, the speed at which that water is coming in and then dropping, does not work with a sometimes lunar tide, sometimes a solar tide, sometimes a neap tide, and sometimes a spring tide. In fact, before we knock off, let me just leave you with that final thought. I'm glad I remembered. It isn't logical to think sun here, moon here, and earth here, that it kind of is logical to think that this would be the strongest pull on the tides. Sun and the moon pulling there. What isn't logical is to think that when the moon drops down to here, right, when the moon drops down to here, that this counteracts the moon's pull. Why on earth would the sun counteract the moon's gravitational pull? If anything, obviously it would carry on pulling, and what you would feel is more of a pull there, because they're both pulling, aren't they? It's going to create a gap, not a gap, sucking the water this way, and then the other illogical thing is when the moon comes to the full moon position, if that is the strongest or one of the strongest of the tides, of the pulls, how can the moon on the opposite side of planet Earth also be classed as one of the strongest, one of the highest tides? Yes, it does seem like it, doesn't it? We see it. They tell us where the sun is, where the moon is. But it's not logical. How can it be there and then the total opposite direction? It doesn't make any sense. It's another illogical thing that for some reason people find logical. If the moon is pulling one way and the sun is pulling the other way, but only half as strong, how on earth is it going to be the same as when the moon is on the same side as the sun pulling on Earth? This isn't logical. There is no pattern to be found. The only worthwhile pattern, really, in the whole of this, the moon's gravitational pull is this. When the moon's here. And the pull. Pulling that way, pulling that way, pulling that way. That would be the only real, true, logical high tide here. Isn't it? Everything else, it would be coming that way when the moon's here. When it's here, well, pulling that way, the sun's pulling that way. Look, it's just ridiculous. There is no logic. Oh yeah, but science. Huh. Yep, we know how that goes, don't we? All right, mate, that's my gift to you. There's your pattern. 12ths. It's a 12-foot tide, and you can verify this information for yourself, SciManDan, the next time you go down to Cornwall or to Brighton. All right? It's been fun. It's been emotional. But inconclusive. The moon doesn't have anything to do with the movement of water on this planet. There's no evidence for it. Something else is displacing the water. Am I saying it's a flat earth? Of course not. But I'm definitely not saying it's a round earth. There's too many inconsistencies. It's almost as if it's a bit of both, because the round earthers, when the flat earthers say something, you don't really listen to it. You just go, all right, well, how does that work then? And I'm afraid a lot of the flat earthers do the same. When the round earthers go, no, how does this work? And then flat earthers go, well, how does this work then? Like, how does the water stay on the planet? Gravity, moon, pull. It's not the moon. It's not the moon. So all of the evidence for gravity is out the window. It's not gravity. That moon and then the other bodies of water. You're saying that the wind and weather in general masks that 1 centimetre that the Caspian Sea moves. SciManDan, highly logical. But such is life. It just seems that there's a bit of both going on. I don't know. I'm open-minded, I'm objective. Something isn't adding up. The water, moon, no. Nothing to do with each other. All right, peeps. Later, SciManDan. It's been fun. Later.